Should we buy or sell copper? First off, read this disclaimer carefully. Then do your good deed of the day by liking and subscribing. So, it's a base metal, 5-ish% from the 52-week low, minus 29% away from the highs. Not that far back, you had so many people who were like super bullish on copper. Like copper was going to the moon. If you were bearish on copper, you were like nuts. But when it was peak bullish, that is when we did see a very substantial pullback. We did have we are currently at a level that could form a bit of a double bottom-ish low. So you see that this right here it's interesting. On top of that, you also have the red 200-week moving average below us. So how far is it below us? Because we did rally from that region. South of 3-ish% below us. So we have seen a very substantial pullback. Looking at the daily data points, we are below all kinds of moving averages. We have fallen down to a level that is horizontal. And also a double bottom-ish. It's interesting. Looking at these other data points, looking at RSI here, we are very low. Looking far back, way back here to 2006, there have been times where we were even more oversold, but more often than not, we have been higher. Same thing with the PPOs, which measures the distance between price and various of these moving averages here to the left. We are very low. This was during the C19 lockdown. The time where we went super low was during the global financial crisis in 2008. So that is a bit of a caveat. So let's actually look at that sell-off to sort of like have some idea about what could happen. So let's zoom in a bit and do a bit of a review like that. So in this case, we went from oversold on RSI to just deeply oversold. So that's the caveat here. So let's go here to the daily data points. We are emerging from a super low level here on the PPOs. The distance from the blue 100-day moving average is super low. Also the red 200-day moving average. The previous time we had these extreme readings was back, here during the C19 lockdown. That was a good time to turn bullish on copper. So I write horizontal support and double bottom here on copper. I give the bulls a 3 because they have a lot to prove. So we do have a very interesting level. But there's a big difference between a dead cat bounce and a major low. But we also saw some very interesting readings on RSI and the PPOs. So unless this is as bad of a context as the global financial crisis, then we could see interesting price action on a bullish side here for copper. Looking at the seasonality here to the right over the last 10 years in red, 7 years in blue, and 5 years in green. The coming period leading up until early August is actually rather bullish for copper. Looking to the left, over the last 5 years, then we do see that August, the next month, it is weak, and that is something we do see also here to the right, is that seasonality is bullish leading up until early August, and then we see some pullback leading into later August, where a new bullish phase begins. If we go here and look at the last 10 years, July is one of the stronger months, and we still have, quite a chunk left here from July. I mean, we're still in early July, and it closes higher 60% of the time. It is one of the strongest months for copper. Looking at the last 20 years, then we do see that July closes higher 70% of the time with an average 3.1% gain. The only month that is stronger than July is February. So we literally are in one of the strongest months for copper, and we recently have seen a very substantial pullback. So this is very interesting. The only caveat here with the seasonality is August. August is the weakest month. So I give the bulls a 4 here on seasonality. It is very interesting for the current month, but the issue we did see is that August usually sees some pullback, but July is most relevant to us anyway. If you do not want to get into the futures, there is an ETF with CPER as the ticker. When it comes to the fundamentals, given that we have seen this very substantial pullback also to a horizontal support level as well, this is an interesting price level here from a more fundamental perspective. It is a demand level. Let's look at the correlations. We have 96% positive with the S&P 500, 93% with XME, which is the metals and mining ETF, so actually a bit lower than the S&P. We have a perfect correlation with the CPER, which is the ETF, the copper ETF, and that is very, very, very good. And 99% positive with a COPX, which is the copper miner ETF. Looking at daily data points, 59% with the S&P 500, 62% with metals and mining, perfect with the copper ETF, and 93% with the copper miners ETF. Looking both short and long term, the strongest correlation we did get was with the XME. So what happens with the metals and mining ETF is very likely going to affect the copper futures. So we have seen a major pullback here as well. Here again, we have fallen down to this very interesting horizontal price range. Been a lot of activity here, both bullish and bearish. You can see that we are in the middle of this price range. So this is just interesting. What is even more interesting here is this blue 100-week moving average, which we can see back here, very important as a resistance level. And here it was support. So it is a moving average that we expect to, to motivate, big money to make some moves. So yeah, this is just very, very, very interesting from a bit more bullish perspective, frankly. When it comes to the RSI, we are not at like a screaming buy level. When we look at the 20-week PPO here in purple, it is very interesting. More often than not, this level has been buyable. Looking at the daily data points, looking at the MACD here, we are at this very key low. The previous time we had this low reading was back here. That was very buyable. Another level was back here in 2020. So let's find the C19 lockdown. Yeah, this is a very interesting level. Here is the relationship between the copper futures and the metals and mining ETF. So this is a bit messy because we had the potential to form a major low. Let me draw it in. So here we could have had a major double bottom, but we did go a bit lower, but now we are above it. So we are emerging from a very key low in this relationship. And when we look at RSI, the low end of RSI, weekly RSI, has been very buyable in the past. So this is some interesting price action that could mean outperformance for copper. Looking at the seasonality, in blue over the last 7 years, bullish. Green over the last 5 years, we usually see a bit more weakness towards the middle of July. In red over the last 10 years, yeah, overall we are coming to a period where copper tends to outperform the metals and mining ETF. Then we have the metals and mining ETF versus the S&P 500. So looking at the RSI range that we formed after June in 2020, that is when this current RSI formed a key low in this pair and led to massive outperformance for metals and mining. You see here as well in late November it was this low, and then we saw massive outperformance all the way up until we got very overbought here on the RSI. So this is it's interesting, definitely very interesting here. Look at seasonality. So over the last 10 years, it's overall bearish. Over the last 7 years here in blue, it's a bit bullish, and also green here. We do see that from 11th of July, that is when we usually see a low in this pair and outperformance for metals and mining through August. I will give the bulls a 5 here on relative performance. Very interesting things happening with the XME, and also when comparing, copper XME, interesting things, and XME the SPY. So overall, 3.8 here in favor of the bulls. The critical level, entry signal and stop loss is horizontal support and double bottom. So let's look at some, let's scan for some opportunities in relevant stocks. So here is Freeport-McMoRan. Major sell-off. In this case, we have fallen down to a potential key level. This could become a double bottom. It could. No guarantee, of course. But this is one of the best opportunities the bulls have had in quite some time. Rather oversold here on daily RSI. So it's a level that is dangerous for bears. Just like it is dangerous for the bulls when we are very high on RSI and PPOs. Here is Southern Copper Corporation. If you see here, the red 200-week moving average was very relevant back here as well, so it has legitimacy. And we are now bouncing from that key level. That's very interesting. It's a clean support level in play. We have had a major pullback. So yeah, the primary expectation is that the bulls are going to capitalize on that. Here is another metals stock, Reliance, steel and aluminum. The very interesting moving average in play at the moment is definitely this green 50-week moving average. A lot of history here. And currently it is a level that attracts bulls. Going to the daily data points, we see that we have been able to reclaim the 200-day moving average in red. Here is Hecla Mining Company. In this case, we can see that price has fallen down to a little bit smaller arrow, I guess, like that. Okay, like this. So this is a key horizontal support level. We have support back here, even at this peak back here. So it's a very key level where there could be some interesting price action. Looking here at RSI and some of the shorter term PPOs, it is a level that has a tendency to attract bulls. Here finally we have Timken Steel Corporation. Looking at weekly data points, we can see that this green 50-week moving average definitively has been viable in the past here as well. And we recently tested it. Let's look at the dailies. So it is a bit messy because on the dailies, the 200-day moving average is a clear resistance level. But yeah, we definitively have seen very substantial pullbacks in metals and mining commodities and stocks. And there is some interesting price action at this point. So definitely a lot to have on our radars going forward. Whatever you do, of course, you always want to have a clear entry signal and a stop loss.